There are moments when your fingers tremble so badly you can barely type. When the light from your phone screen feels too bright in the dark, too exposing, like someone might see what you're doing and stop you before you can finish. Rachel's hands were shaking like that, violent, uncontrollable tremors as she sat on the bathroom floor with her back pressed against the cold tile wall, her knees pulled to her chest, trying to make herself as small as possible. The kind of small that might disappear. The kind of small that might finally be safe. Her lip was bleeding. She could taste the copper tang of it, warm and metallic, mixing with the salt of tears she refused to let fall. Not yet. Not while she could still hear him downstairs, his heavy footsteps pacing the kitchen floor, the low rumble of his voice talking to someone on the phone. Laughing. Actually laughing, like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't just. Her thumb hovered over her mother's contact name. Mom. Such a simple word. Such a complicated relationship. But right now, in this moment, with her ribcage aching and her wrist throbbing where he'd grabbed her, pushed her, held her down right now, her mother was the only person she could think of. The only person who might understand. The only person who might come. She typed fast, desperate, the words blurring through unshed tears. Mom. He hurt me. Please. I need help. Her finger hit send before she could second-guess it, before she could delete it and tell herself she was overreacting, before she could convince herself that maybe it wasn't that bad, maybe she'd provoked him, maybe she deserved. No. The phone screen dimmed in her hand. Message sent. The little checkmark appeared, blue and final, and for the first time in hours, Rachel felt like she could breathe. Just a little. Just enough to keep her lungs working. She didn't know that her phone had betrayed her in the quietest, cruelest way possible. That the number saved under Mom had been corrupted when she dropped her phone last week, when the screen had cracked, when everything had started falling apart. One digit. Just one single digit had auto-corrected itself, shifted, changed. The message didn't go to her mother. It went to someone else entirely. The rain started 30 minutes later, sudden and violent, the kind of storm that felt personal. Like the sky itself was angry. Rachel heard it hammering against the bathroom window, watched the lightning flash through the frosted glass, counted the seconds until the thunder rolled through. 3 seconds. The storm was close. Too close. Everything felt too close. She kept staring at her phone, waiting for the reply that should have come immediately. Her mother always replied immediately. Always. Even when they fought, even when they hadn't spoken in days, her mother would reply within minutes to a text like that. But the screen stayed dark. Empty. Silent. 5 minutes became 10. 10 became 20. Rachel's chest started to tighten again, that familiar panic creeping back in, wrapping around her ribs like iron bands. Maybe her mother hadn't seen it. Maybe she was asleep. Maybe she didn't care anymore. Maybe Rachel really was alone in this, trapped in this house with a man who smiled at neighbors and donated to charity and held doors open for strangers and came home and made her feel like she was nothing. She should leave. She knew she should leave. But where would she go? She had $63 in her bank account. Her car was in his name. Her friends had slowly disappeared over the last 2 years, one by one, until she'd stopped noticing they were gone. He'd made sure of that. Subtle suggestions. Gentle criticisms. Little comments that added up to isolation, so complete she hadn't even realized it was happening until it was done. The house was quiet now. Too quiet. She couldn't hear him downstairs anymore, couldn't hear the television, or the creak of the floorboards, or any of the sounds that usually told her where he was, what mood he was in, whether it was safe to come out. Her phone buzzed. The sound was so sudden, so unexpected, that Rachel actually gasped, her whole body jerking against the tile wall. She grabbed the phone with both hands, nearly dropping it, her heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. But the message wasn't from Mom. It was from a number she didn't recognize. No name, no profile picture. Just digits and a text that appeared on her screen like a whisper in the dark. I got your message. Are you safe right now? Rachel stared at the words. Read them again. And again. Her brain couldn't process it. Wrong number. It had to be a wrong number. She'd texted her mother. She was sure she'd texted her mother. But the number on the screen wasn't her mother's number. Wasn't even close. Her fingers moved before her mind caught up. Who is this? The reply came within seconds. Someone who wants to help. Are you somewhere he can't reach you right now? The air left Rachel's lungs in a rush. This stranger, this unknown person on the other end of a wrong number, somehow knew it was a he. Somehow understood exactly what kind of message she'd sent. And instead of ignoring it, instead of deleting it like any normal person would do with a misdirected text, this person had replied. This person was asking if she was safe. Thunder cracked overhead, so loud it rattled the window frame. The lights flickered. Rachel's hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't just fear. It was something else. Something she hadn't felt in so long she'd almost forgotten what it felt like. Hope. She typed back, her thumbs clumsy on the cracked screen. I'm locked in the bathroom. He's downstairs. I don't know what to do. 3 dots appeared immediately. Typing. This stranger was typing back. Rachel held her breath, watching those 3 dots pulse on the screen like a heartbeat. Stay there. Stay quiet. I'm going to help you, but I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Trust. What a word. What an impossible, dangerous, beautiful word. Rachel had trusted before. She'd trusted her stepfather when he'd said he'd take care of her after her real father died. She'd trusted her boyfriend, ex-boyfriend. She had to start thinking of him that way, when he'd said he loved her, when he'd promised he'd never hurt her, when he'd convinced her to move in with him and leave everything else behind. Trust had destroyed her. But sitting on that cold bathroom floor, with rain lashing the window and thunder shaking the walls, and the taste of blood still in her mouth, sitting there with nowhere to go and no one to call, and nothing left to lose, Rachel made a choice. Okay, I trust you. The reply came faster than before, and somehow, impossibly, the words on the screen made her feel less alone than she'd felt in 2 years. Good. Now listen carefully. You're going to get through this. I promise. What Rachel didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, was that the man reading her messages wasn't just anyone. He wasn't a random stranger who'd stumbled into her crisis by accident. He was Michael Armstrong, Alpha King of the Northern Territories, ruler of a realm that existed in the shadows of the human world, a leader bound by laws older than nations and curses deeper than time. And he had just read 3 words that shattered a silence he'd carried for over a century. He hurt me. Michael stood in his private study, surrounded by stone walls and ancient books and the weight of responsibility that never left his shoulders, staring at the phone in his hand like it might explode. His chest felt tight. His wolf was pacing inside him, restless and furious, and something else he couldn't name. Something that felt like recognition. It wasn't possible. He couldn't recognize his mate by scent. That had been taken from him decades ago, punishment for a choice he'd made to save his people, a curse woven into his very bones by the old magic. He couldn't recognize her by sight, couldn't know her by touch. The bond that should have snapped into place the moment he met her, that primal, undeniable knowing, had been severed before it could form. But he could recognize her by one thing. A cry for help. Not a casual request. Not a simple question. A genuine, desperate plea spoken or written from the depths of a suffering heart. That was the loophole in the curse. The single crack in the unbreakable spell. And Rachel's message, those 3 simple, devastating words, had torn through every defense he'd built and spoken directly to the part of him he'd thought was dead. She was his mate. And she was in danger. Michael's hand tightened around the phone. His wolf snarled, demanding action, demanding blood, demanding that he track down whoever had hurt her and tear them apart piece by piece. But he couldn't do that. Not yet. Because there was another law, one even more binding than the curse itself. An alpha king could not claim a mate who was suffering when they met. The bond couldn't be built on rescue, couldn't be founded on vulnerability and desperation and the raw need for salvation. Because how could she ever know if she'd chosen him freely, or if she'd just latched onto the first person who'd offered her safety? How could he ever know if what she felt was love, or just gratitude? The law was clear. Cruel, but clear. He had to help her. Had to get her out of danger, give her space to heal, watch her become whole again. And then, only then, if she chose him on her own, if she came to him as an equal and not as someone he'd saved, could the bond be acknowledged. Which meant he couldn't tell her who he was. Couldn't reveal what he was. Couldn't let her know that the stranger on the other end of her accidental text was a king who'd just felt his entire world shift on its axis. He could only be a voice in the darkness. A protector in the shadows. A stranger who cared. Michael looked down at the phone again, at the message still glowing on the screen. I trust you. His jaw clenched. His heart, that organ he'd forgotten, could still ache, twisted in his chest. He began to type. Outside the study windows, the storm raged on, rain hammering the ancient fortress walls, lightning splitting the night sky. But inside that room, in the silence between thunderclaps, an alpha king made a vow to a woman who didn't even know his name. He would save her. And then he would let her go, even if it killed him. If you've ever felt the weight of a message you almost didn't send, then you know exactly where this story is going. And trust me, you won't see the ending coming. Hit that subscribe button for Cindy's Wolfheart stories, because we're just getting started. The messages came every few minutes after that. Steady. Calm. Like whoever was on the other end had nothing else in the world to do except make sure Rachel was okay. Is the door locked? Yes. Good. Keep it that way. Has he tried to come upstairs? No. I think he's watching TV. Okay. I need you to do something for me. Look around the bathroom. Is there a window? Rachel lifted her head, eyes scanning the small space she'd been hiding in for the past hour. There was a window, narrow and high on the wall, the kind that was meant for ventilation more than escape. The glass was frosted, streaked with rain, and even if she could reach it, she wasn't sure she could fit through it. There's a window, but it's too small. And I'm on the second floor. The 3 dots appeared again. Rachel found herself watching them like a lifeline, those tiny pulsing indicators that meant someone was there, someone was thinking about her, someone cared enough to keep responding. That's okay. I'm not asking you to climb out. I just need to know your options. You're doing great, Rachel. She froze. Her heart stopped. Actually stopped for a full second before it kicked back into gear with a painful thud against her ribs. He'd used her name. She'd never told him her name. Her fingers flew across the screen, panic rising sharp and metallic in her throat. How do you know my name? The reply took longer this time. 10 seconds. 20. Long enough for her mind to spiral into dark possibilities. Was this someone who knew her? Someone connected to him? Was this a trap? Then the message appeared. I can explain that. But right now, I need you to stay focused on staying safe. Your name was in your phone's message signature settings. It shows up on some networks. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to help you. Rachel stared at the explanation. It made sense. Maybe. She wasn't sure. Her phone was old, the settings were complicated, and she'd never really understood half the features. But something about the way he'd written it, direct, honest, not defensive or aggressive, made her want to believe him. Besides, what choice did she have? Okay, thank you for trusting me. Now tell me, do you have anyone you can call? Family? Friends? Anyone who can come get you? The question hit harder than she expected. Rachel looked down at her phone, at the pathetically short contact list, at the names of people she hadn't spoken to in months. Years, in some cases. Her mother lived 6 hours away and hadn't answered the original message. Her best friend from college had stopped returning her calls after the 5th time Rachel had canceled plans. Her coworkers were polite but distant, the kind of people who asked how you were but didn't actually want to know. No, there's no one. She felt pathetic typing it. Felt the full weight of how isolated she'd become, how completely she'd let herself be cut off from everyone who'd ever mattered. The tears she'd been holding back finally started to fall, hot and silent, sliding down her cheeks and dripping onto her pulled-up knees. Then you have me. 3 words. Simple. Impossible. Ridiculous, even, coming from a stranger who'd received her message by accident. But something about them made the tightness in Rachel's chest ease just slightly. Made her feel like maybe she wasn't completely alone in the world. I don't even know who you are. My name is Michael. And I know this is strange. I know you have no reason to trust me. But I'm asking you to anyway, just for tonight. Just until you're somewhere safe. Michael. The name felt solid somehow. Real. She whispered it out loud in the darkness of the bathroom, testing how it sounded, and something about it made her feel calmer. Stronger. What do I do, Michael? First, you survive tonight. Then we figure out tomorrow. The hours crawled by like wounded animals. Rachel stayed on that bathroom floor, her back against the wall, her phone clutched in both hands like a talisman. The storm outside grew worse before it got better, rain hammering the roof, wind howling around the corners of the house. She could hear him downstairs, moving around, the familiar sounds of his nighttime routine. The refrigerator opening and closing. The clink of a glass. The television volume rising and falling. Normal sounds. Domestic sounds. The kind of sounds that should have meant safety and home and peace. They terrified her. But Michael kept messaging. Not constantly, he seemed to know when she needed space, when the silence was okay, but enough to remind her he was there. Enough to keep her grounded. What's your favorite color? The question came out of nowhere, so unexpected that Rachel actually smiled for the first time in hours. She wiped her eyes, smearing tears across her cheeks. What? Your favorite color. I want to know. Why? Because you're more than what happened tonight. You're more than the worst thing someone did to you. So tell me something real. Something that's just yours. Rachel's throat tightened. She looked around the bathroom, white tile, beige towels, everything neutral and bland and chosen by someone else. She tried to remember the last time anyone had asked her about herself. Really asked, not just making conversation. The last time someone had wanted to know something about her that didn't serve some purpose. Blue. Like the ocean. I grew up near the coast. Tell me about it. And somehow, sitting on that cold floor in the middle of the worst night of her life, Rachel found herself telling a stranger about her childhood. About the small beach town where she'd spent her summers, about collecting shells with her father before he died, about the way the water looked at sunset, all gold and orange and purple, like the sky was on fire. She told him about the fish market where they'd buy fresh cod on Saturdays, about the lighthouse that still used a real keeper, about the sound of foghorns on misty mornings. She told him things she hadn't thought about in years. Things she'd buried under the weight of survival and fear and the daily effort of making herself smaller, quieter, less. And Michael listened. Not just with responses, though he sent those too, asking questions, making observations that showed he was actually paying attention, but with a kind of presence she could feel even through a phone screen. Like he was really there. Like he really cared. You miss it? It wasn't a question. Rachel looked at those 3 words and felt something crack open inside her chest. Yes, I miss who I was there. You're still her. She's just been hiding for a while. But she's still there, Rachel. I can hear her in the way you talk about the ocean. Fresh tears spilled down her face, but these were different. Not the hopeless, terrified tears from before. These were the kind that came when someone really saw you, for the first time in so long you'd forgotten what it felt like. Thank you. For what? For being here. For not hanging up. For treating me like I matter. There was a longer pause this time. Rachel watched the screen, wondering if she'd said too much, been too vulnerable, scared him off. Then the message appeared, and her breath caught in her throat. You do matter. More than you know. Around 3 in the morning, Rachel heard his footsteps on the stairs. Heavy. Deliberate. Coming up. Her entire body went rigid. The phone slipped slightly in her suddenly sweaty hands, and she had to grip it tighter to keep from dropping it. Her eyes locked on the bathroom door, still locked, thank God, still locked, and she held her breath as the footsteps came closer. Closer. They stopped right outside the door. Silence. The kind that screamed louder than any words. Then his voice, low and controlled, the tone he used when he was trying to sound reasonable. The tone that always came before things got worse. Rachel. Open the door. She didn't move. Didn't breathe. Didn't respond. I know you're upset. I know I lost my temper. But you're being dramatic, and this is getting ridiculous. Open the door so we can talk like adults. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely type, but she managed to get the message out. He's outside the door. Michael's response was immediate. Don't open it. No matter what he says. Do you understand me? Don't open it. Rachel. His voice was harder now, edges showing through the reasonable facade. This is your last chance. Open the door or I'm breaking it down. He says he's going to break it down. Let him. The noise will alert neighbors. Do you have your keys? Your wallet? Your phone charger? Rachel looked around frantically. Her purse was in the bedroom. Her keys were downstairs. She had nothing except the clothes on her back and the phone in her hands. No, I don't have anything. That's okay. You have the most important thing. You have the will to leave. Everything else we can replace. The doorknob rattled violently. He was testing it, seeing how sturdy the lock was, calculating his options. Rachel pressed herself harder against the wall, making herself as small as possible, as if she could somehow disappear into the tile. You're being a child, he snapped, all pretense of reasonableness gone. You think you can just hide from me? This is my house. My bathroom. My everything. You don't get to lock me out. Michael, I'm scared. I know. But listen to me very carefully. In approximately 4 minutes, you're going to hear sirens. When you do, I need you to start screaming. As loud as you can. Do you understand? What? How? Do you trust me? Rachel looked at those 3 words. She'd known this man. If you could even call someone you'd only texted a few hours knowing them for less than 4 hours. She didn't know what he looked like. Didn't know where he lived. Didn't know anything about him except that he'd been there when she had no one else, that he'd listened when she needed to be heard, that he'd made her feel human again. Yes, I trust you. Good. For minutes. Wait for the sirens. Then scream. The banging on the door got louder. More aggressive. Her ex, she had to start thinking of him that way, had to reclaim that piece of her life, was yelling now, words she tried not to hear, threats she tried not to process. And then, impossibly, exactly 4 minutes later, she heard them. Sirens. Getting closer. Getting louder. The beautiful, terrifying sound of help coming. Rachel opened her mouth and screamed. The police took statements in the living room while rain continued to pour outside, softer now, like the storm was exhausted. Rachel sat on the edge of the couch. The same couch where she'd watched countless movies, eaten countless dinners, lived countless lies about being happy wrapped in a blanket an officer had given her, watching 2 other officers talk to her ex in the kitchen. His voice was calm, measured. He was explaining that this was all a misunderstanding, that Rachel had anxiety issues, that she was prone to overreacting, that she locked herself in the bathroom and wouldn't respond to reason. He was so convincing, so believable. The kind of man who coached Little League and volunteered at the food bank and made everyone laugh at neighborhood barbecues. The officers kept nodding, kept taking notes, kept looking at Rachel like maybe she really was the problem. But then the younger officer, a woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense expression, had knelt down in front of Rachel and quietly asked to see her wrist. The one that was swollen and bruised in the shape of fingerprints. The one that told the truth her ex's words tried to bury. Everything shifted after that. Now Rachel sat alone with her phone in her lap, listening to the sounds of her life being cataloged as evidence. Her hands were still trembling, but differently now. Not from fear. From the strange, weightless feeling of free falling into an unknown future with no safety net to catch her. Are you okay? Michael's message appeared on the screen, and Rachel almost laughed. Was she okay? She had no idea. She wasn't dead. Wasn't trapped anymore. The police were here, and they were taking her seriously, and her ex was being read his rights in the kitchen while an officer took photos of the bathroom door he'd been seconds away from kicking in. But okay? She didn't know if she'd ever been okay. The police are here. They're arresting him. I don't know how you did that, but thank you. I called in a wellness check. Told them I was a concerned friend who'd received a disturbing message. They take those calls seriously. You saved my life. No, you saved your own life. I just gave you a little help. The female officer appeared in front of her, crouching down to eye level again. Miss Chin, we're going to need you to come down to the station to give a full statement. Do you have somewhere you can stay tonight? Family? Friends? That question again. That impossible question. Rachel shook her head, feeling the tears threaten to come back. No, I don't have anyone. The officer's expression softened. Okay, we have resources. There's a women's shelter about 20 minutes from here. They have space tonight. We can take you there. Make sure you get settled. A shelter. The word felt surreal. Like something that happened to other people, people whose lives had fallen apart in ways Rachel had always believed couldn't happen to her. But here she was, wrapped in a police-issued blanket, with bruises on her wrist and blood dried on her lip, and nowhere to go except a shelter for women with nowhere to go. This was her life now. Okay, she whispered. Thank you. The room was small but clean. A single bed with white sheets. A dresser with 3 empty drawers. A window with bars on it for safety, they said, though Rachel couldn't help feeling like she'd traded one cage for another, even if this one had kinder keepers. She sat on the edge of the bed at 4 in the morning, still wearing the same clothes from the bathroom floor, and stared at her phone. She should sleep. Her body was screaming for it, exhaustion pulling at her bones like weights. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face, heard his voice, felt his hands. Are you somewhere safe? Michael's message lit up the screen, and Rachel felt something in her chest ease slightly. Yes, they brought me to a shelter. I have a room. Good. Try to sleep if you can. I can't. Every time I close my eyes. She didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. I understand. Do you want me to stay up with you? Rachel stared at the question. This stranger, this man she'd never met, never seen, never heard speak out loud, was offering to stay awake at 4 in the morning just to keep her company. Just so she wouldn't be alone with her thoughts. You don't have to do that. I know. I want to. Talk to me, Rachel. Tell me something about yourself. Something from before. Before. What a concept. Before tonight. Before the relationship. Before everything fell apart. Rachel tried to remember who she'd been before, tried to reach back through the years of slowly dimming her own light to make someone else comfortable, and found fragments. Pieces. A mosaic of a person she used to be. I wanted to be a marine biologist when I was little. I was obsessed with sea turtles. Why sea turtles? Because they always find their way home. No matter how far they swim, no matter how lost they get, they always come back to the beach where they were born. I thought that was the most magical thing in the world. It is magical. Do you still want that? To work with them? Rachel looked around the small shelter room, at the life she'd somehow ended up in, at how far she'd drifted from every dream she'd ever had. She was 26 years old. She had a degree in English literature that she wasn't using. She'd been working at a bookstore for minimum wage because her ex had said it was cute, said she didn't need to worry about a career, said he'd take care of everything. She'd let someone else write her story. Let them erase entire chapters until she barely recognized the plot anymore. I don't know who I am anymore, Michael. I don't know what I want. I don't even know what I like. He had opinions about everything, what I wore, what I ate, who I talked to, what I watched on TV. And I just went along with it. I didn't even notice it was happening until it was done. That's not your fault, isn't it? I stayed. I saw the signs. I knew something was wrong. But I stayed anyway. Leaving is harder than people think. Especially when someone has spent years making you doubt yourself. Making you believe you're nothing without them. Making you forget you ever had the strength to stand on your own. The tears came again, but Rachel let them fall this time. Didn't fight them. Didn't try to swallow them down or hide them or pretend she was stronger than she felt. How do you know all this? There was a pause. Longer than usual. When the response came, it felt heavier somehow. Weighted with something personal. Because I've seen what happens when people are trapped. When they're told they're powerless for so long they start to believe it. And I've seen what happens when they remember the truth that they were never powerless at all. They just forgot their own strength. What if I don't have any strength left? You sent that message tonight. You locked yourself in the bathroom. You screamed when I told you to scream. You're sitting in a shelter instead of going back to him. That's strength, Rachel. That's more strength than most people ever have to use in their entire lives. She read his words 3 times. 4. Let them sink into the broken places inside her, the places that had been hollowed out by 2 years of being told she was too sensitive, too dramatic, too much, and somehow never enough. Thank you for not giving up on me tonight. I won't ever give up on you. I promise. It was an impossible promise. A promise from a stranger who had no obligation to keep messaging her, no reason to care about what happened to a random woman who'd sent a wrong number text. But something about the way he said it, simple, direct, absolute, made Rachel believe him. Outside the shelter window, the sky was starting to lighten. Not sunrise yet, but that pale gray promise that dawn was coming. That the night would end. That morning always followed darkness, no matter how long the darkness lasted. Can I ask you something? Anything. Why are you doing this? Why did you help me? Another pause. Rachel watched the 3 dots appear and disappear twice before the message finally came through. Because everyone deserves to have someone in their corner. And tonight, I'm in yours. Sleep came eventually, dreamless and heavy, pulling Rachel under like a riptide. When she woke, pale afternoon sunlight was streaming through the barred window, and for a disorienting moment, she couldn't remember where she was. The room was too small. The bed was too hard. Everything smelled like industrial laundry detergent instead of the lavender fabric softener her ex had insisted they use. Then memory crashed back in. The bathroom. The police. The arrest. The messages. Rachel grabbed her phone, heart pounding, half expecting to discover the whole thing had been a dream or a mistake. But the conversation was still there, dozens of messages scrolling back through the night, ending with Michael's last text at 5:30 in the morning. Sleep well. I'll be here when you wake up. It was 2 in the afternoon now. 9 hours later. And when she scrolled down, there was a new message, sent just 20 minutes ago. Good afternoon. How are you feeling? Rachel stared at the screen. How was she feeling? Her body ached. Her wrist throbbed. Her head felt like it was stuffed with cotton. But underneath all of that, beneath the physical pain and exhaustion, there was something else. Something she hadn't felt in so long she'd almost forgotten what to call it. Relief. I'm okay. Sore. But okay. That's good. Have you eaten? Now that he mentioned it, Rachel realized she was starving. She couldn't remember the last time she'd eaten, sometime yesterday, maybe, before everything fell apart. Her stomach twisted with hunger, hollow and sharp. No, not yet. There should be a common area with food. Go eat something. I'll wait. It was such a simple instruction. So practical. But something about it made Rachel's eyes sting with tears again. When was the last time someone had told her to take care of herself without it being a criticism? Without the implication that she was being difficult or high maintenance or needy? She pulled herself out of bed, her body protesting every movement, and made her way down the narrow hallway to the common room Michael had mentioned. There were other women there, some younger than her, some older, all wearing the same expression of careful neutrality that came from surviving things you didn't want to talk about. A volunteer at the counter helped her get a sandwich and a cup of soup, and Rachel sat at a small table by the window, eating mechanically while she watched the world outside continue like nothing had changed. Cars drove by. People walked dogs. A mother pushed a stroller down the sidewalk, talking on her phone. Normal life, happening everywhere, while Rachel sat in a shelter trying to figure out how to rebuild something from the wreckage. Her phone buzzed. Did you eat? Yes. Thank you for reminding me. Good. Now I need you to do something else for me. What? I need you to write down 3 things. First, one thing you want to do tomorrow. Not survive. Not get through. Something you actually want to do, even if it's small. Rachel stared at the message. Want. What a concept. She tried to remember the last time anyone had asked her what she wanted and came up empty. I want to go outside. Walk somewhere. Feel the sun. Perfect. Second, one thing you used to love that you stopped doing. That one was easier. Harder, too, in a different way. Reading. I used to read all the time. Fiction, poetry, everything. But he said it was a waste of time. Said I should be doing something productive instead. We're going to fix that. Third, and this is the most important one, I want you to write down one thing that's true about you. Not something someone else told you. Something you know, deep down, is true. Rachel's hand hovered over the keyboard. Her mind cycled through all the things her ex had said about her. All the labels he'd applied, the characteristics he'd assigned, the person he'd insisted she was. Dramatic. Oversensitive. Difficult. Ungrateful. Broken. But underneath all of that, buried beneath 2 years of being slowly eroded, there was something. A truth she'd carried since childhood. A knowing that had survived everything. I am stronger than I look. The response came immediately, and Rachel could somehow feel the smile in it, even through text. Yes, you are. Now remember that, Rachel. Especially on the days when you don't believe it. You are stronger than you look. And you're going to prove it. What Rachel couldn't see, what she had no way of knowing, was that 300 miles away, Michael Armstrong was sitting in his private study with his head in his hands, his phone on the desk in front of him, his entire world reoriented around a woman he'd never met. His wolf was going insane. Pacing, snarling, demanding that he go to her, find her, claim her, protect her the way a mate should be protected. The animal didn't understand curses. Didn't care about laws or consequences or the distinction between rescue and choice. It only knew that she was hurting, and every instinct Michael possessed was screaming at him to stop it. But he couldn't. The law was absolute. An alpha king could not claim a mate who'd been suffering when they met. The bond would be tainted. She would never know if she'd chosen him freely or if she'd just latched onto the first person who made her feel safe. And Michael would never know if what she felt was love or just gratitude mixed with trauma and desperation. So he had to do the impossible. He had to help her heal. Had to watch her become strong again, whole again, herself again. Had to give her space and time and every resource she needed to build a life that was entirely her own. And then, when she was finally free, when she finally had the power to walk away from anyone, including him, only then could he reveal himself. Only then could he ask if she might want him the way he already knew, with absolute certainty, that he wanted her. It was the cruelest form of torture. Like being starved while watching someone eat. Like drowning while standing on the shore. But Michael had lived through worse. He'd survived a century of silence, of knowing his mate was out there somewhere and having no way to find her. He'd survived the curse. He'd survived leadership and war and loss, and the weight of responsibility that never eased. He could survive this too. He had to. Because Rachel deserved more than a king who'd rescued her. She deserved a choice. A real one. And Michael would give her that, even if it killed him, even if she chose to walk away. His phone buzzed with a new message, and despite everything, despite the pain and the longing and the impossible situation, Michael smiled. "Thank you, Michael, for everything. I don't know what I would have done without you tonight." He read the message 3 times before responding, choosing his words carefully. "You would have survived. You're stronger than you think. I'm just glad I could be here for you." It wasn't enough. Not even close. What he wanted to say was, "You're my mate. You're the reason I've been breathing for 100 years. You're everything I've been waiting for and everything I never knew I needed. Come to me. Let me show you what it means to be cherished. Let me spend the rest of my life making sure no one ever hurts you again." But he couldn't say any of that. So he said what he could. "Get some rest. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Good night, Michael. Good night, Rachel." He set the phone down and stared at it like it might suddenly reveal answers to questions he didn't know how to ask. Outside his study windows, the Northern Territory stretched out in endless darkness, forests and mountains and packed lands that looked to him for guidance. But for the first time in his reign, Michael didn't care about any of it. All he cared about was a woman in a shelter 300 miles away, learning to remember her own strength. And all he could do was wait. 3 months passed like a held breath slowly released. Rachel learned to sleep without nightmares. Learned to eat without her stomach clenching with anxiety. Learned to walk down the street without checking over her shoulder every 30 seconds. The shelter had helped her get a restraining order. Had connected her with a therapist who actually listened. Had given her space to figure out who she was when she wasn't busy surviving someone else's version of her. And through it all, Michael was there. Not physically. Never physically. But every morning when she woke up, there was a message waiting. Sometimes just a simple good morning. Sometimes a question about her day. Sometimes a quote from a book or a photo of a sunrise or a terrible joke that made her laugh despite herself. He never pushed. Never demanded more than she was willing to give. Never asked to meet or video chat or even hear her voice. Just existed as a constant, steady presence in her life. A friend. The best friend she'd ever had, if she was honest with herself. She'd started reading again. Poetry mostly. Mary Oliver and Rumi and Nayyirah Waheed. Words about wilderness and healing and finding yourself in the aftermath of breaking. She'd send Michael her favorite passages, and he'd respond with his own, and they'd built an entire language between them made of other people's words and the silence between messages that somehow said everything. She'd also started going to the beach. It took her 2 months to work up the courage, 2 months of thinking about it and planning it and talking herself out of it, and finally just getting on a bus and going. The same beach from her childhood, or close enough. The same salt air and crying gulls and endless horizon that had made her feel infinite when she was young. She'd stood at the water's edge with her shoes in her hand and her feet in the surf, and she'd cried. Not sad tears. Not scared tears. Just release. Like something that had been locked inside her chest for years had finally found the door. She'd texted Michael a photo. Just the ocean. No explanation needed. "You made it back. I made it back. How does it feel?" Rachel had stared at that question for a long time, watching the waves roll in and out, feeling the sand shift beneath her feet, tasting salt on her lips from the spray and the tears. Like coming home. Now, sitting on that same beach 3 months after the worst night of her life, Rachel felt like a different person. Not fixed. She was learning that healing wasn't about being fixed, wasn't about returning to some perfect state that maybe had never existed in the first place. But different. Stronger. More herself than she'd been in years. Her phone buzzed. "I have something to tell you. And I need you to keep an open mind." Rachel frowned at the screen. In 3 months of daily messages, Michael had never sounded uncertain. Never sounded nervous. But there was something in that text that felt off. Careful. Like he was bracing for impact. "Okay, you're kind of scaring me. Don't be scared. Just listen. There's a place I want you to visit. A sanctuary of sorts. It's about 4 hours north of where you are. They work with marine conservation. Sea turtles, specifically. Rachel's heart jumped. Sea turtles. He remembered. Of course he remembered. Michael remembered everything she'd ever told him, collected her words like treasures, and returned them to her when she needed them most. Why are you telling me this? Because they're hiring. And I think you should apply. She stared at the message. Read it again. Applied the words to her life and couldn't make them fit. She was barely keeping herself together, working part-time at a coffee shop, living in a tiny apartment with 2 roommates she'd found through the shelter's resource network. The idea of applying for a real job, a career job, something that connected to the dreams she'd abandoned years ago, it felt impossible. Michael, I can't. I don't have the qualifications. I don't have the experience. I don't even have a car to get there. You have a degree in English literature and a childhood spent studying marine biology. You have passion. You have intelligence. You have the ability to learn. That's more than enough. But, Rachel, when are you going to stop letting fear make your decisions? The question hit like cold water. Sharp. Clarifying. True. That's not fair. No, it's not. But it's accurate. You've spent 3 months rebuilding yourself. You've done the work. You've proven you can survive. Now I'm asking you to do something harder. I'm asking you to live. Rachel looked out at the ocean, at the endless expanse of possibilities stretching to the horizon. Her therapist had said something similar last week. That there was a difference between existing and living. That recovery wasn't just about stopping the bad things, it was about starting the good ones. I'm afraid. I know. Do it anyway. What if I fail? What if you don't? She sat with that question for a long time. Let it settle into her bones. Turned it over like a shell, examining it from every angle. What if she didn't fail? What if she applied and got an interview and somehow, impossibly, got the job? What if she moved to a small coastal town and worked with sea turtles and built a life that actually felt like hers? What if she let herself have something good? Okay, I'll apply. But if this goes badly, I'm blaming you. Deal. Send me the application when you're done. I'll help you edit it. You don't have to do that. I know. I want to. Let me help you, Rachel. Let me be part of this. There was something in that message that felt heavier than usual. More personal. Like he wasn't just talking about the application. Like he was asking for something bigger, something Rachel couldn't quite name. Okay. Thank you. Always. 2 weeks later, Rachel stood in front of a building that looked like it had been carved from driftwood and dreams. The Crescent Bay Marine Sanctuary sat on a cliff overlooking the ocean, all weathered wood and large windows that reflected the afternoon sun. She could hear the water from here, the constant rhythm of waves against rocks, and smell the salt air that had haunted her memories for years. She'd gotten the interview. Somehow. Her application had been good, better than good, if she was honest, because Michael had helped her find the words to talk about her passion, her dedication, her willingness to learn. He'd shown her how to frame her English degree as an asset, how to discuss her love of storytelling in the context of conservation education. He'd made her believe she deserved this. Now she stood in the lobby, wearing the one professional outfit she owned, her resume clutched in slightly sweaty hands, trying to remember how to breathe like a normal person. Rachel Chin. She turned to find a woman in her 50s standing in a doorway, smile warm and genuine, wearing cargo pants and a sanctuary t-shirt covered in turtle illustrations. Dr. Sarah Martinez, according to the research Rachel had done. Director of the sanctuary. Published marine biologist. Someone who dedicated her life to protecting the ocean. Yes. Hi. Thank you for meeting with me. Of course. Come on back. Dr. Martinez led her through a hallway lined with photographs of sea turtles, volunteers, and release events. I have to tell you, your application really stood out. The way you wrote about your connection to the ocean, about understanding these animals as more than just conservation statistics, that's exactly what we need here. Rachel felt warmth spread through her chest. Pride. Actual pride in something she'd done. Thank you. That means a lot. The interview room wasn't really a room at all. It was a glassed-in porch overlooking the ocean, with comfortable chairs and the kind of view that made it impossible to be nervous. Dr. Martinez gestured for Rachel to sit, and they spent the next hour talking. Not just about the job, but about life. About why Rachel had stopped pursuing marine biology. About what had brought her back. About second chances and new beginnings and the courage it took to try again. Rachel found herself being honest in ways she hadn't expected. Not about everything. She didn't mention the shelter, or the restraining order, or the worst night of her life. But about feeling lost. About having given up on herself. About being given a reason to try again. Can I ask you something? Dr. Martinez leaned forward, expression thoughtful. Your recommendation letter. The one from Michael Armstrong. How do you know him? Rachel blinked. Recommendation letter? She hadn't asked anyone for a recommendation letter. Hadn't even thought about it. But apparently Michael had. He's a friend. We met online. He's been helping me get back on my feet. He wrote quite extensively about your character. Your resilience. Your potential. Dr. Martinez smiled. He also made a substantial donation to the sanctuary on the condition that we seriously consider your application. Which we would have done anyway, for the record. Your qualifications speak for themselves. But I'm curious about someone who would go to those lengths for a friend. Rachel's mind was reeling. Michael had donated to the sanctuary? Had written her a recommendation? Had done all of this without telling her, without asking for credit, without making it about him at all? He's special, she managed. He's been there for me through a really difficult time. I honestly don't know where I'd be without him. Well, he clearly believes in you. And after talking with you today, I can see why. Dr. Martinez stood, extending her hand. Welcome to Crescent Bay, Rachel. The job is yours if you want it. Rachel stood on shaking legs, her heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. Really? Really? You start in 2 weeks. That should give you time to relocate. We have some housing resources if you need them, a few small cottages we keep for staff. Nothing fancy, but they're right on the water. Yes. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. She floated out of the building in a daze, her mind spinning with logistics and possibilities, and the overwhelming reality that her life had just changed. Again. But this time in the right direction. She sat in her car, technically a rental she'd borrowed from one of her roommates, and pulled out her phone with shaking hands. I got the job. The response came within seconds. I knew you would. Michael. Dr. Martinez told me what you did. The donation. The recommendation letter. Why didn't you tell me? Because it wasn't about me. It was about you getting the opportunity you deserved. Do you mind that I helped? Did she mind? Rachel tried to examine her feelings, expecting to find embarrassment or wounded pride or the complicated shame of accepting help. But all she felt was gratitude. Deep, overwhelming, tearful gratitude. No, I don't mind. But I want to pay you back. The donation, that had to be expensive. Consider it an investment in your future. I don't want your money, Rachel. I just want you to be happy. Why? Why do you care so much about what happens to me? There was a longer pause this time. Long enough that Rachel started to wonder if she'd pushed too hard, asked too much, crossed some invisible line in their carefully maintained friendship. Then, because everyone deserves to have someone who believes in them. And I believe in you. Is that okay? Rachel looked out at the ocean, at the sanctuary building perched on the cliff, at the life she was about to step into. A life she'd thought was impossible 3 months ago. A life that existed because a stranger had answered a wrong number text and decided she was worth saving. It's more than okay. Thank you, Michael. For everything. You did this, Rachel. I just held the door open. You're the one who walked through it. Moving took less time than expected, mostly because Rachel didn't have much to move. A suitcase of clothes. A box of books. The few belongings she'd managed to accumulate in 3 months of rebuilding. Everything she owned fit in the trunk of a borrowed car, which felt both depressing and liberating at the same time. The cottage the sanctuary provided was small, one bedroom, a kitchen barely big enough to turn around in, a bathroom with ancient plumbing that groaned like a ghost. But it had a porch that overlooked the ocean, and windows that filled the space with salt air and sunlight, and a quiet that felt like peace instead of loneliness. Rachel spent her first night there sitting on the porch steps, wrapped in a blanket, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and rose and violet. Her phone was in her lap, and she was composing a message to Michael, trying to find words big enough to contain what she was feeling. I'm sitting on my porch watching the ocean. My ocean. My porch. My life. I keep waiting for someone to tell me I'm not allowed to have this. That I don't deserve it. That it's going to be taken away. No one's going to take it away. You earned this. Did I though? I feel like I just fell into it. Like I got lucky. Luck is when preparation meets opportunity. You prepared by doing the work to heal. You prepared by being brave enough to apply. You prepared by believing you deserved something better. And when opportunity showed up, you were ready for it. That's not luck, Rachel. That's growth. She read his words 3 times, feeling them sink in. Michael had a way of reframing things, of taking her doubts and turning them inside out until she could see them from a different angle. He'd been doing it for months, patiently, consistently, helping her rebuild her self-worth one conversation at a time. I wish I could thank you properly. I wish I could do more than just send messages. You don't owe me anything. I know, but I want to. You've been there for me every day for 3 months. You've listened to me, supported me, believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. And I don't even know what you look like. I don't know anything about your life. It feels unbalanced. Another pause. Longer this time. Rachel watched the sun sink lower, watched the sky deepen from gold to copper to deep, burning orange. What do you want to know? The question felt significant. Like a door opening. Like Michael was finally willing to let her see past the carefully maintained boundaries he'd kept between them. Everything. Where do you live? What do you do? Why were you awake at 3 a.m. when I sent that first message? Who are you, Michael? I live in the mountains. About 300 miles north of where you are now. I run a community. A large one. A lot of people depend on me for guidance and protection. That's why I was awake that night. I keep unusual hours because of my responsibilities. Rachel frowned at the vague description. A community? What did that mean? A commune? A religious group? A town? What kind of community? It's complicated. Hard to explain over text. But it's been my home for a long time. My family has led here for generations. So you're like a mayor or something? Something like that. There was clearly more to the story. Rachel could feel the things he wasn't saying, the careful way he was choosing his words. But she didn't push. Michael had given her space for 3 months. Had let her reveal herself at her own pace. She could do the same for him. Do you like it? The responsibility? Most days. It can be isolating sometimes. Lonely. When you're responsible for so many people, you can't always show weakness. Can't always be honest about what you're feeling or what you need. That sounds hard. It is. But it's my purpose. My duty. I accepted it a long time ago. Rachel thought about that. About choosing purpose over happiness. About carrying weight because someone had to. About being strong for others even when you were breaking inside. You deserve someone who takes care of you too. You know that, right? The response took a while to come. Maybe. Someday. Someday soon, I hope. Everyone needs someone in their corner. Even leaders. Even strong people who take care of everyone else. Is that what you think I am? Strong? The strongest person I know. You answered a message from a stranger in crisis. You stayed up all night making sure I was okay. You've been there every single day since, helping me rebuild my life, asking for nothing in return. That's not just strength, Michael. That's goodness. And it's rare. The sun had set completely now, the sky fading to deep purple and indigo. Stars were starting to appear, scattered across the darkness like promises. Rachel pulled her blanket tighter and waited for Michael's response, hoping she hadn't said too much, revealed too much of what she was starting to feel. Thank you for seeing me that way. Most people see the position, the responsibility. They don't see the person underneath. I see you. Maybe not your face or your life or all the details, but I see who you are. And I'm grateful I got to know you. Got to? Past tense? Rachel smiled at the screen. Get to. Present tense. I'm not going anywhere, Michael. You're stuck with me now. Good. I was hoping you'd say that. The first month at the sanctuary passed in a blur of learning and wonder. Rachel spent her days helping with turtle rehabilitation, assisting with educational programs, learning everything she could about the animals she'd loved since childhood. She learned to identify species by shell patterns, learned to prepare specialized diets, learned to monitor nesting sites and assist with releases. She was good at it. Better than good. Dr. Martinez told her she had a natural gift for connecting with both the animals and the visitors, for making complex conservation issues accessible and inspiring. For the first time in years, Rachel felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. But not everyone at the sanctuary was happy about her presence. Marcus Chin, no relation, though the shared last name was an unfortunate coincidence, was the sanctuary's head of operations. He'd been there for 15 years, had worked his way up from volunteer to paid staff, and he'd apparently expected to be the one hired for Rachel's position. He didn't say it directly, but Rachel could feel his resentment in every interaction. The way he watched her work with critical eyes. The way he questioned her decisions. The way he made sure everyone knew he had more experience, more knowledge, more right to be there. She tried to ignore it. Tried to focus on her work and let his attitude roll off her. But it was hard. Especially when he started making comments. Must be nice to just walk into a job like this, he said one afternoon, loud enough for the other volunteers to hear. Some of us actually had to earn our positions. Rachel felt her face flush. She was crouched next to a rehabilitation tank, monitoring a juvenile green sea turtle who'd been injured by a boat propeller. Her hands stilled on the water testing kit. I did earn it. I applied. I interviewed. I was offered the position. Right. After Michael Armstrong made a massive donation on your behalf. Funny how money works, isn't it? The other volunteers shifted uncomfortably. Rachel felt something cold settle in her stomach. She'd known people might wonder about the donation, might question whether she'd really earned the job or just bought it. But hearing it said out loud, hearing the judgment in Marcus's voice, it hit harder than she'd expected. The donation had nothing to do with my qualifications. Sure it didn't. Marcus crossed his arms, leaning against the tank. Look, I'm not saying you're completely incompetent. You clearly care about the work. But let's be honest, you have an English degree and childhood dreams. I have 15 years of actual experience. And somehow, you're the one who got hired. Because she was the best candidate. Dr. Martinez appeared in the doorway, her voice calm but carrying an edge that made Marcus straighten. Which I explained to you when you complained about it 3 weeks ago, and I'm explaining again now. Rachel brings skills we needed: public engagement, education development, fresh perspective. You bring operational expertise. Both are valuable. Both are necessary. And this competitive nonsense ends now. Are we clear? Marcus's jaw tightened. Crystal. Good. Rachel, how's Luna doing? Dr. Martinez moved to the tank, effectively dismissing Marcus, who stalked out of the room with barely contained frustration. Rachel tried to focus on explaining the turtle's progress, but her hands were shaking. Her throat felt tight. All the old fears were flooding back. The voice in her head that said she wasn't good enough, didn't deserve to be here, was fooling everyone, including herself. After Dr. Martinez left, Rachel sat on the floor next to the tank, watching Luna paddle in slow circles, and tried to breathe through the anxiety attack building in her chest. Her phone buzzed. How's your day going? Michael's timing was almost supernatural. He always seemed to know when she needed him, even though they were 300 miles apart and had never spoken out loud. Honestly? Not great. Someone here found out about your donation. They're questioning whether I earned this job or bought it. Who? Marcus, the head of operations. He's been hostile since I started, but today he said it out loud in front of other people. What did you say? That I earned it. That the donation had nothing to do with my qualifications. But Michael, what if he's right? What if I only got hired because of the money? What if everyone here thinks I'm just some charity case who needed saving? The response came fast. Stop. Breathe. Listen to me very carefully. You got hired because Sarah Martinez recognized your potential. Because your application was exceptional. Because your interview showed passion and intelligence and dedication. The donation got you in the door, yes. But you're the reason you walked through it. Do you understand the difference? I'm trying to. Rachel. I've made donations to hundreds of organizations over the years. Recommended dozens of people for positions. You know how many of them actually got hired? Less than half. Because money can't buy confidence. Can't buy passion. Can't buy the ability to connect with people and animals the way you do. Sarah hired you because you were the best candidate. Period. How do you know that? Because I know you. And I know Sarah doesn't make decisions based on donations. She makes decisions based on what's best for the sanctuary. If she thought you weren't qualified, all the money in the world wouldn't have changed her mind. Rachel read his words 3 times, trying to let them sink past the doubt and shame and fear that Marcus had stirred up. Trying to believe them. It still feels like I don't belong here sometimes. Like I'm pretending to be someone I'm not. You know what that's called? Imposter syndrome. And nearly everyone who's ever done anything worthwhile has felt it. It doesn't mean you're a fraud. It means you're growing. Means you're in a space that challenges you. And yes, it's uncomfortable. But discomfort is where growth happens. When did you get so wise? I've had a lot of time to learn. And a lot of mistakes to learn from. Rachel smiled despite herself. Luna had stopped swimming and was floating near the surface, watching her with those ancient, knowing eyes that sea turtles had. Eyes that had seen everything and survived anyway. Thank you for talking me down. I needed that. Anytime. And Rachel? Don't let Marcus steal your joy. You worked too hard to get here. You deserve to enjoy it. I'll try. Good. Now go back to work. Show him why you belong there. Things got worse before they got better. Marcus started documenting everything Rachel did. Every small mistake. Every moment of hesitation. Every question she asked. He compiled it all in a report that he presented to Dr. Martinez 2 weeks later, arguing that Rachel was in over her head and should be demoted or removed. Dr. Martinez called them both into her office. Rachel sat in one of the chairs overlooking the ocean, her stomach twisted in knots, while Marcus stood by the door with his arms crossed and a satisfied expression on his face. I've read your report, Marcus. Dr. Martinez set the papers down on her desk. And I've also been watching Rachel work for the past 6 weeks. So let me be very clear about something. Rachel is learning. That's what new employees do, they learn. The questions she asks are intelligent questions. The mistakes she's made are minor and normal. And her engagement with visitors and volunteers has been exceptional. But I'm not finished. What concerns me is your behavior. The hostile environment you've created. The way you've been undermining a colleague instead of supporting her. This sanctuary works because we function as a team. And right now, you're not being a team player. Marcus's face flushed red. I'm trying to maintain standards. If we're going to lower our expectations just because someone's connected to a donor. Stop. Dr. Martinez's voice was sharp. That's enough. Rachel was not hired because of a donation. She was hired because I believed she was the right person for this position. And in the weeks since she's been here, she's proven me right. Now, I'm going to ask you directly, can you work with her professionally, or do we need to have a different conversation about your future here? The room went very quiet. Rachel could hear her own heartbeat, could feel the weight of Marcus's anger radiating across the space. I can work with her, he said finally, each word clipped and precise. Good. Then I expect to see that starting immediately. You're both dismissed. Marcus left without looking at Rachel. She sat frozen in her chair, trying to process what had just happened. Dr. Martinez had defended her, had stood up for her, had made it clear that she belonged here, that she was valued, that the donation wasn't the reason she'd been hired. Rachel. Dr. Martinez's voice was gentler now. Are you okay? Yes. Thank you for what you said. I meant every word. You're good at this work. You have instincts that can't be taught. Don't let Marcus's insecurity make you doubt yourself. Is that what this is? His insecurity. Of course. He's been here 15 years and still doesn't have the people skills you demonstrated in your first week. That's threatening to him. But it's not your problem to solve. Your only job is to keep doing the work you're doing. Can you do that? Rachel nodded, feeling tears prick her eyes. Yes, I can do that. That night, Rachel sat on her porch with a glass of wine she'd bought to celebrate her first month at the sanctuary and hadn't opened until now. The ocean was dark beyond her small patch of light, waves rolling in steady rhythm, stars scattered across the sky like someone had shattered diamonds. She pulled out her phone. Today was hard. Tell me. So she did. Told him about Marcus's report. About Dr. Martinez's defense. About feeling like she was constantly proving herself, constantly fighting to deserve the space she occupied. About being tired of the fight. I'm proud of you. For what? I didn't do anything. Dr. Martinez is the one who handled it. You stayed. You didn't quit. You didn't let him convince you that you didn't belong. That takes strength, Rachel. More than you realize. It doesn't feel strong. It feels exhausting. That's because real strength isn't loud or dramatic. It's quiet. It's showing up every day even when it's hard. It's continuing to believe in yourself even when someone's trying to tear you down. You think warriors are the ones charging into battle shouting. But real warriors are the ones who keep walking forward even when they're scared. Even when they're tired. Even when it would be easier to give up. Rachel looked out at the ocean, at the endless darkness punctuated by starlight, and felt something shift inside her chest. A settling. A knowing. Have you ever given up on something you wanted? The question came out before she could stop it. Personal. Maybe too personal. But she wanted to know. Wanted to understand this man who'd become the most important person in her life without ever showing his face. The pause was longer than usual. Yes. Once. Something I wanted more than anything. And I've regretted it every day since. What happened? I let fear make my decision. I convinced myself I was doing the right thing, the noble thing, by walking away. But I was really just protecting myself. And in doing so, I lost something I'll never get back. I'm sorry. Don't be. It taught me something important. That fear is a terrible compass. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is reach for what you want, even if you might lose it. Even if it might hurt. Rachel felt her heart beating faster. Felt the weight of words unspoken, questions unasked, a connection that had been building for 4 months and was starting to feel like more than friendship. Michael, can I ask you something? Anything. Why have we never talked? Like actually talked, voice to voice? Another long pause. Would you want to? Yes. I think I would. I want to hear your voice. I want to. I don't know. I just feel like there's more to say than text can hold. There is. But I'm not ready yet. Can you give me a little more time? Disappointment settled in Rachel's chest, heavy and unexpected. But underneath it was understanding. Whatever Michael was dealing with, whatever complicated situation he was in with his community and his responsibilities, he needed space. And she could give him that. Of course. I'm not going anywhere. Thank you. I promise, when the time is right, we'll talk. I'll explain everything. I need to wait for the right moment. Okay. I trust you. I know. And I don't take that lightly. 6 months after that first wrong number text, Rachel's life had transformed in ways she wouldn't have believed possible. She'd been promoted to education coordinator at the sanctuary. Had developed new programs that brought school groups and community members to learn about marine conservation. had assisted with 3 successful turtle releases, watching animals she'd helped heal swim back into the ocean like prayers made manifest. She'd also made friends. Real friends. Sarah had become a mentor and confidant. Some of the volunteers had started inviting her to dinners and beach bonfires. She'd even started dating casually, nothing serious, just coffee dates and walks, testing the waters of connection without diving in too deep. But through everything, Michael remained constant. The first message in the morning. The last text before bed. The person who knew her better than anyone, even though they'd never met. And it was starting to feel complicated. Because somewhere along the way, friendship had shifted into something else. Something Rachel didn't quite know how to name. She found herself thinking about him at random moments, wondering what he looked like, imagining what it would be like to hear his laugh instead of just reading haha on a screen, checking her phone too often, hoping for new messages, disappointed when they didn't come as quickly as she wanted. She was falling for him, had maybe already fallen, and she had no idea what to do about it. The weirdest thing happened today. She texted one night from her porch. A visitor asked if I was single. And before I could answer, I thought about you. Is that weird? The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Rachel watched them with her heart in her throat, wondering if she'd just ruined everything, crossed a line they'd been carefully avoiding for 6 months. What did you tell them? That I wasn't interested. Which is true. But also, I think the reason I'm not interested is because I'm already interested in someone else. Someone I've never even met. Rachel, I know this is complicated. I know we've never talked about what this is between us. But I can't keep pretending I don't feel it. Can't keep acting like you're just a friend when you're so much more than that. Her hands were shaking. She'd said it. Finally said out loud the thing that had been building for months. And now there was nothing to do except wait for his response and hope she hadn't just destroyed the most important relationship in her life. You're right. This is complicated. More complicated than you know. Then explain it to me. Please. Because I'm going crazy here trying to figure out what we are. Whether you feel what I feel. Whether there's any possibility of this becoming something real. There is. God, Rachel, there is. But the timing isn't right. And I need you to trust me that I have reasons for waiting. What reasons? I can't explain over text. But I promise, when I can tell you everything, I will. And when I do, you'll understand. Can you wait a little longer? Rachel looked out at the ocean, at the moonlight painting silver across the waves. She thought about the past 6 months. About how Michael had saved her life, helped her heal, supported her through every crisis, and celebrated every victory. About how he'd become the axis her world turned on without her even realizing it was happening. Could she wait? Could she keep existing in this liminal space between friendship and something more, trusting that he had good reasons for the distance he maintained? How much longer? I don't know. Soon, I hope. But I need some things to fall into place first. Things I can't control. Are you with someone else? Is that what this is about? No. There's no one else. There hasn't been anyone else for a very long time. This is about me and my situation, not about you. Please believe that. I do believe you. But Michael, I can't do this forever. I can't keep falling for someone I've never met while you keep putting off any kind of real connection. At some point, I need more. I know. And you deserve more. You deserve everything. And I want to give it to you. I just need a little more time to make sure I can do it right. Rachel closed her eyes, feeling tears slip down her cheeks. This should have been simpler. Should have been a straightforward conversation about feelings and possibilities. But somehow it was tangled up in complications she didn't understand, held hostage by a timeline she couldn't see. Okay, I'll wait. But please don't make me wait forever. I won't. I promise. And Rachel? Yes? I feel it too. Everything you're feeling. I've felt it since the beginning. And when we finally meet, when I can finally show you who I am and what you mean to me, it's going to be worth the wait. I promise you that. She read his words 3 times. 4. Let them sink into the hollow places in her chest where doubt had been building. That's a big promise. I know, but I keep my promises. Especially to you. 2 weeks later, Rachel was helping with a turtle release when her phone rang. Not a text, an actual call. From a number she didn't recognize. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. Maybe instinct. Maybe hope. Maybe the universe deciding it was time. Hello, Miss Chin? This is Eleanor Frost. I'm calling from the Northern Territories Community Council. Rachel frowned, stepping away from the small crowd gathered for the release. I'm sorry, I think you have the wrong number. No, I have the correct number. We'd like to extend an invitation for you to visit our territory. We're hosting a conservation summit next month and would love to have you as a speaker. We've heard excellent things about your education programs at Crescent Bay. What? How did you hear about my programs? We have connections throughout the conservation community. Your work has been very well received. We'd cover all your expenses, of course. Travel, accommodation, meals. And there would be a speaking fee. We value the time and expertise of our presenters. It was tempting. A chance to share her work with a broader audience. A speaking fee that would help her pay off the last of the debts she'd accumulated during the worst years of her life. But something felt off. She'd never heard of the Northern Territories Community Council. Had never been to that part of the country. Can I think about it? Of course. I'll email you the details. We hope you'll consider it, Miss Chen. It would mean a great deal to our community. After the call ended, Rachel stood staring at her phone, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The Northern Territories. That's where Michael had said he lived. Where he led his community. Was this connected to him? Had he arranged this somehow? She texted him immediately. Did you set up a speaking invitation for me at some conservation summit in the Northern Territories? The response was almost instant. No, but I know about it. And I think you should accept. Why? Is this about seeing you? Is this finally when we meet? Maybe, if you want to. But more than that, it's a genuine opportunity. The summit is real. Your work deserves to be shared. And yes, I'll be there. If you want to meet me, this could be the time. Rachel's heart started racing. 6 months of messages. 6 months of falling for someone she'd never seen. And now suddenly the possibility of meeting him was real, concrete, happening. I'm scared. Of what? Of it being different in person. Of you being disappointed when you actually see me. Of everything changing. Rachel, listen to me. Nothing about how I feel is going to change when we meet in person. If anything, it's only going to get stronger. But I need you to come here on your own terms for your own reasons. Not just for me. Can you do that? She thought about it. About the speaking opportunity. About sharing her work. About the chance to visit a new place and meet new people and continue building the life she'd fought so hard to create. Yes, I can do that. But Michael? Yes? I really hope this is when we finally talk. When you finally explain everything. Because I don't think I can wait much longer. It is. I promise. And Rachel? Yes? I can't wait to finally meet you. The flight north felt like traveling into a different world. The landscape shifted from coastal warmth to dense forests and mountain ranges that seemed to touch the sky. Rachel pressed her face against the airplane window, watching civilization thin out below her, replaced by wilderness so vast it made her feel impossibly small. The Northern Territories weren't on most maps, at least not the tourist ones. She'd had to do significant research just to understand where she was going. A remote region bordering the Canadian Rockies, sparsely populated, known mostly for its protected forests and the indigenous communities that had lived there for centuries. And apparently, for a conservation summit that had attracted speakers from across the country. A car was waiting for her at the small regional airport. Not a taxi, a private car, sleek and black, with a driver who held a sign with her name on it. He loaded her luggage without a word and held the door open, his expression carefully neutral. Welcome to the Northern Territories, Miss Chen. Thank you. How far is it to the summit location? About 2 hours. The roads get rough once we leave the main highway, but the scenery is worth it. He wasn't wrong. The drive was breathtaking. Mountains rose on either side of increasingly narrow roads, forests so thick with pine and cedar that the sunlight came through in scattered beams. They passed waterfalls and lakes and stretches of wilderness that looked untouched by human hands. And then, gradually, she started seeing signs of habitation. Not towns exactly, something else. Compounds? Communities? Large properties with gates and guards, spread out across the mountain valleys like kingdoms unto themselves. The driver noticed her staring. Packed territories, he said, as if that explained anything. I'm sorry. The community's here. They're organized into packs. Family groups, mostly. Each one has their own territory, their own leadership structure. It's an old tradition. Rachel frowned. Like wolves. The driver's eyes met hers in the rearview mirror, and something flickered across his face. Amusement? Concern? Something like that. Before she could ask more questions, they turned onto a private road marked with a simple wooden sign, Summit Lodge. The road wound through more forest before opening into a clearing that took Rachel's breath away. The lodge was massive, part modern architecture, part ancient stone fortress. It sat on the edge of a cliff overlooking a valley so beautiful it looked like a painting. Behind it, mountains rose in layers of blue and purple, snow-capped peaks touching the clouds. The building itself seemed to grow from the rock, all natural wood and massive windows that reflected the sunset in shades of gold and crimson. We're here, the driver announced unnecessarily. Rachel stepped out of the car and just stared. The air smelled different here, cleaner, wilder, carrying scents of pine and snow and something else she couldn't name. Something that made her skin prickle with awareness, made her heart beat faster without knowing why. Miss Chin. A woman appeared at the lodge entrance, professionally dressed, but with an edge of wildness to her that matched the landscape. I'm Eleanor Frost. We spoke on the phone. Welcome to the Northern Territories. Thank you. This place is incredible. It is. Come, let me show you to your room. The welcome reception starts in 2 hours, but I'm sure you'd like to freshen up after your journey. Her room was on the 3rd floor, with windows overlooking the valley and a balcony that made her dizzy just looking at the drop. The furnishings were luxurious, but somehow organic, wood and stone and fabrics and earth tones that felt like they belonged in this wild place. After Eleanor left, Rachel stood on the balcony and pulled out her phone. I'm here. This place is unbelievable. Michael's response came immediately. I know. I can see your balcony from where I'm standing. Rachel's heart jumped. She looked around, scanning the forest and the other buildings visible from her vantage point, trying to spot him. Trying to finally see the face of the man who'd occupied her thoughts for 6 months. Where are you? Not yet. Tonight at the reception. I'll find you. I promise. Michael, I'm nervous. So am I. What if? Stop. Whatever you're about to say, whatever fear you're about to voice, let it go. We've waited 6 months for this. A few more hours won't break us. Get ready for the reception. Wear something you feel powerful in. And trust me, when we meet, everything is going to make sense. Rachel looked down at her suitcase, at the limited wardrobe she'd brought. She'd packed for a professional conference, not for meeting the man she was maybe falling in love with. But there was one dress, deep blue, the color of the ocean at dusk, simple but elegant. She'd bought it on impulse last month and hadn't had occasion to wear it yet. Okay, I'll see you tonight. You will. And Rachel? Yes? Thank you for coming. For being brave enough to be here. It means more than you know. The welcome reception was held in a massive hall with timber beam ceilings and a stone fireplace large enough to stand in. Rachel walked in feeling overdressed and underprepared, her blue dress suddenly seeming too formal, too much, too obvious. But the other guests were dressed similarly, conference professional with an edge of elegance. Scientists and conservationists from across the country, all gathered in this remote location to discuss wildlife preservation and environmental protection. Rachel recognized a few names from academic papers she'd read, felt her imposter syndrome kick in hard. She accepted a glass of wine from a passing server and tried to look like she belonged. Rachel Chin. A man approached, mid-40s, with kind eyes and a firm handshake. Daniel Torres. I run a wolf conservation program in Montana. I've read about your education work with sea turtles. Really impressive stuff. Thank you. That means a lot coming from you. I've followed your research on pack behavior. They fell into easy conversation about conservation challenges, funding issues, public education. Other people joined them, a woman who worked with raptors in Alaska, a man who studied salmon migration in the Pacific Northwest. Rachel found herself relaxing, enjoying the intellectual exchange, the shared passion for protecting wild things. But part of her attention was always somewhere else. Scanning the room. Looking for a face she wouldn't recognize. Waiting for some signal that Michael was there, that he'd kept his promise. An hour passed. Then another. The reception was winding down, people beginning to drift toward the dining hall where dinner would be served. Rachel's phone stayed silent in her clutch purse. No messages. No indication that Michael was anywhere nearby. Disappointment settled in her chest, heavy and familiar. Had he changed his mind? Decided he wasn't ready after all? Was she going to spend this entire summit waiting for a meeting that would never happen? Miss Chin. Eleanor Frost appeared at her elbow. We're about to sit for dinner. You're at the head table. We've seated our speakers together so you can get to know each other before tomorrow's sessions. Of course. Thank you. The dining hall was even more impressive than the reception area. Long tables set with crisp linens and elegant place settings, candles casting warm light across polished wood. The head table sat on a raised platform at the front of the room, overlooking the other guests. Rachel found her place card and sat, still scanning faces, still hoping. The other speakers filed in academics, researchers, a wildlife photographer whose work she'd admired for years. They introduced themselves, made small talk, discussed their presentations for the next day. And then the room went quiet. Not gradually. All at once. Like someone had flipped a switch and cut off every conversation mid-sentence. Rachel looked up from her menu to see what had caused the sudden silence. A man stood in the doorway. He was tall, imposingly so, with broad shoulders and a presence that seemed to fill the entire room. Dark hair, sharp features, eyes that were almost silver in the candlelight. He wore a simple black suit but carried himself like royalty, like someone accustomed to command, to obedience, to being the most powerful person in any space he entered. Everyone in the room had stood. Not out of politeness, out of deference. Out of something that looked almost like fear mixed with reverence. Eleanor Frost hurried forward, her professional composure cracking slightly. Alpha King. We didn't expect you to join us for dinner. Alpha King? Rachel's mind stuttered, trying to process that title. Was it ceremonial? Cultural? Some kind of community tradition? The man's eyes swept the room, cataloging faces with efficient precision until they landed on Rachel. And stopped. She felt the impact of that gaze like a physical touch. Electric. Intense. Searching. Like he was looking past her skin and bones straight into her soul. I wanted to welcome our speakers personally, he said, his voice deep and resonant, carrying easily across the silent room. Please, everyone sit. This is meant to be a celebration, not a formal audience. People sat slowly, carefully, stealing glances at him while trying not to stare too obviously. He walked to the head table, and Rachel realized with dawning horror that there was an empty chair directly beside hers. A chair that no one had mentioned. A chair that was apparently reserved for. He sat down next to her. This close, he was overwhelming. Not in a threatening way, but in the way mountains were overwhelming, in the way the ocean was overwhelming, vast and ancient and impossible to look away from. She could smell cedar and snow and something wild, like pine forests after rain. Miss Chin. He turned to face her, and those silver eyes held hers with uncomfortable intensity. "I've been looking forward to meeting you." His voice. That voice. Deep and measured and somehow familiar in a way that made no sense because she'd never heard it before. Never heard any voice connected to. No. "I'm sorry," Rachel managed, her voice coming out smaller than intended. "Have we met before?" A faint smile touched his lips. In a way, though not face to face. Not until now. The room spun. The pieces were falling together too fast, creating a picture she didn't want to see. The remote location. The packed territories. The title. The way everyone in this room treated him like someone above normal hierarchy. The fact that he knew her name. The familiarity of his presence despite never having met. "Michael," she whispered. The smile widened slightly, and something in his expression cracked relief, maybe, or vulnerability that seemed out of place on such a powerful face. "Hello, Rachel." The world narrowed to the space between them. Everything else faded, the other guests, the elaborate dinner, the entire summit. There was only this, 6 months of messages made flesh. The stranger who'd saved her life sitting close enough to touch. The man she'd fallen for without seeing his face, without hearing his voice, without knowing the most basic facts about who and what he was. Alpha King. "You lied to me," she said, her voice shaking. "You said you ran a community. Led a family group. You made it sound like you were a mayor or something. Not." She gestured helplessly at the room full of people who were still stealing glances their way, at the deference and fear and reverence in every face. "Not whatever this is. I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you everything. And I had my reasons." What reasons could possibly justify? Rachel stopped, suddenly aware that every word they spoke was being overheard, analyzed, witnessed. "Can we talk somewhere private?" "Of course." Michael stood, offering his hand. When she didn't take it, something flickered across his face. Hurt. But he recovered quickly. "Follow me." He led her out of the dining hall, through corridors that grew quieter and more isolated, until they reached a study with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the valley below. He closed the door behind them, and suddenly they were alone. Really alone. For the first time since she'd sent that accidental text 6 months ago. "Explain," Rachel demanded, crossing her arms, putting physical distance between them even though part of her wanted to close it. "Explain all of it. Who you are. What you are. Why you didn't tell me." Michael moved to the window, his back to her, silhouetted against the dying light. "I'm the Alpha King of the Northern Territories. The leader of the werewolf packs that live in these mountains. And before you ask, yes, werewolves are real. We've lived alongside humans for millennia, hidden in plain sight, maintaining the balance between our world and yours. Werewolves." He'd said it so calmly, so matter-of-factly, like he was discussing the weather. Rachel's mind rebelled against the word, tried to find rational explanations, came up empty. That's insane." "It's true. And deep down, I think you know it. You felt something when you arrived here. The air felt different. The forest felt alive in a way that cities never do. Your instincts were telling you something was different about this place. About me." He was right. She had felt it. But accepting that feelings translated to werewolves was a bridge too far. "Even if I believed you, which I don't, that doesn't explain why you hid it. Why you let me fall for someone who doesn't even exist." Michael turned to face her, and the vulnerability in his expression was startling. "I exist. Everything I told you about myself was true. I just left out the supernatural elements because." He stopped, ran a hand through his hair in a gesture of frustration. "Because there's a law. An ancient law that governs how Alpha Kings can claim their mates. Mates? Soulmates. The one person you're destined to be with. And you're mine, Rachel. You've been mine since the moment your message came through. But I couldn't tell you. Couldn't claim you. Because the law states that an Alpha King cannot claim a mate who is suffering when they met. The bond has to be freely chosen, not born from rescue or desperation." Rachel stared at him, trying to process words that sounded like they came from a fantasy novel. So you're saying, what? That you're a werewolf king who thinks I'm your destined soulmate, but you couldn't tell me because of some ancient law about not saving people. I know how it sounds. Do you? Because it sounds completely insane. I helped you heal, Michael said quietly. I watched you grow stronger, become yourself again, build a life that was entirely yours. I gave you space and time and support while staying in the shadows, because the law required it. Because I needed you to come to me freely, as an equal, not as someone I'd rescued who felt obligated to be grateful. And inviting me here? What was this supposed to be? A chance for you to meet me on neutral ground. To decide for yourself, with full knowledge of who and what I am, whether you wanted anything to do with me. No pressure. No obligation. Just choice. Rachel laughed, but it came out bitter. Choice? You orchestrated everything. The job at the sanctuary. The promotion. This summit. You've been pulling strings for 6 months while pretending to be my friend, and now you expect me to believe any of this is about choice. The job was your talent. The promotion was your hard work. This summit was your expertise. I opened doors, yes, but you walked through them on your own merit. Michael took a step toward her, then stopped when she backed away. Everything I told you over the past 6 months was real. My feelings were real. The connection between us was real. The only thing I hid was the supernatural element and my true identity. That's not a small thing to hide. I know, and I'm sorry. But Rachel, I need you to understand I had no choice. The curse I carry means I can't recognize my mate by scent or sight or touch. Only by a genuine cry for help. Your text was that cry. It broke through a century of silence and told me exactly who you were to me. But claiming you immediately, when you were traumatized and vulnerable and had nowhere else to turn, would have tainted everything. Would have made it impossible to know if what you felt was real or just survival instinct. A century. He'd said a century. Rachel's mind latched onto that detail because it was concrete, because it was something she could question instead of facing the larger impossibility of everything he was saying. How old are you? 143. She laughed again, hysterical this time. Of course. Of course you're over a century old. Why not? This whole thing is already completely ridiculous. Rachel. No. Stop talking. Just stop. She pressed her hands to her temples, trying to organize thoughts that refused to organize. I came here thinking I was going to meet my friend. The person who'd been there for me through the hardest time of my life. And instead I find out he's some kind of ancient werewolf royalty who thinks I'm his destined mate because of some supernatural law and a curse, and her voice broke. You lied to me. I withheld information. That's different. Is it? Is it really? Tears were streaming down her face now, hot and angry. You let me fall for you. Let me open up to you. Let me trust you with everything, my fears, my dreams, my healing, and the entire time you were keeping this massive secret. How am I supposed to believe anything you've said? How am I supposed to trust that any of it was real? Michael's expression cracked, showing pain that looked genuine. Because I love you. I've loved you from the first message. Loved watching you heal. Loved learning who you are. Loved every conversation. Every revelation, every moment of connection. That was real, Rachel. That will always be real, no matter what else you believe. Don't. She held up a hand. Don't say that. You don't get to say that after lying to me for 6 months. I'm saying it anyway, because it's true. And because you deserve to know that everything I've done, every choice, every sacrifice, every moment of staying away when all I wanted was to be with you, was because I love you enough to give you the freedom to choose. Even if that choice is to walk away. The room was too small. The air too thin. Rachel needed space, needed time, needed to think without those silver eyes watching her with such devastating honesty. I need to leave. Rachel, please. No. I can't do this right now. I can't process this. I need. She moved toward the door, her whole body shaking. I need to not be here. Michael didn't try to stop her. Didn't reach for her or block her path. He just stood there, looking more vulnerable than someone with his power had any right to look, and let her go. "I'll have a car take you back to the airport," he said quietly. "But Rachel, before you decide anything, ask yourself one question. In the past 6 months, have I ever made you feel anything you didn't want to feel? Have I ever pushed you towards something you didn't choose yourself? Or did I just give you the support to become who you already were?" She didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Just walked out of that study and down those hallways and out into the night that smelled like pine and snow and broken promises. Eleanor Frost was waiting in the lobby, her professional mask firmly in place. "Miss Chin, a car is already prepared. We'll have your belongings sent to your home address. I apologize that your visit was cut short." "It's fine." Rachel's voice sounded hollow even to her own ears. "Thank you for the invitation." The drive back to the airport passed in a blur. She stared out the window at the dark forest, at the packed territories hidden in the mountains, at a world that had suddenly become stranger and more complicated than she'd ever imagined. Her phone buzzed. A text from Michael. "I'm sorry. For everything. For not telling you sooner. For hurting you. For loving you before you were ready to be loved. If you never want to hear from me again, I'll respect that. But know this, you changed my life. You made me remember what hope feels like. And I will never regret a single moment of knowing you." Rachel read the message through tears. Read it again. Let the words sink into the shattered places in her chest where trust used to live. Then she turned off her phone and watched the wilderness disappear behind her, carrying away the fantasy of a normal relationship with a normal man who just happened to care. Because there was nothing normal about Michael Armstrong. And there was nothing simple about loving someone who'd saved your life while hiding who they really were. 2 weeks passed in a fog. Rachel went through the motions of her life, work, meals, sleep, but nothing felt real. Everything felt muted, like she was experiencing the world through thick glass. Dr. Martinez noticed and gave her space. Her friends noticed and offered support she couldn't accept. Her therapist noticed and helped her process the betrayal without knowing about the supernatural elements that made it so much more complicated. She'd blocked Michael's number the day after she got home. Couldn't stand seeing his name appear on her screen, couldn't trust herself not to respond if he texted. It was easier to just cut off the connection entirely. Cleaner. At least, that's what she told herself. But late at night, alone in her cottage with the ocean pounding outside her window, she found herself thinking about everything he'd said. About mates and curses and ancient laws. About love that waited 6 months to reveal itself. About the question he'd asked her, "Have I ever made you feel anything you didn't want to feel?" The answer, frustratingly, was no. Every emotion, every connection, every moment of falling for him had been entirely her own choice. He'd never pushed, never manipulated, never used his power or position to influence her decisions. He'd just been there, supportive, constant, real. But he'd also lied. Or at least omitted truths so significant they amounted to lies. How was she supposed to reconcile those two realities? How was she supposed to trust someone who'd kept something so fundamental hidden? She didn't have answers. Just questions that circled endlessly, keeping her awake until exhaustion finally dragged her under. On the 15th day, Dr. Martinez called her into the office. "Sit." It wasn't a request. Sarah closed the door and fixed Rachel with the same look she used when volunteers tried to cut corners on turtle care protocols. "What happened at that summit?" "I don't want to talk about it." "Too bad. Because whatever it is, it's affecting your work. You've been distracted, distant, going through the motions. And that's not like you. So either tell me what's going on, or I'm going to start making assumptions." Rachel looked down at her hands. How did she explain any of this? How did she tell her rational, scientific mentor that she'd discovered werewolves were real and the man she'd been falling for was their king? Someone I trusted lied to me. Someone important. The friend who helped you after you left your ex? Michael, how did you? Rachel, I've known about Michael since you got this job. His assistant contacted me months before you applied, asking questions about our programs, our needs, our culture. I knew there was a personal connection. I just didn't realize how personal until I saw you fall apart after that summit. Sarah leaned forward. What happened? He wasn't who I thought he was. He hid things. Important things. And I found out in the worst possible way. Did he hurt you? No. Yes. Not physically. Just. Rachel struggled to find words. He made me fall for a version of himself that wasn't complete. And now I don't know what was real and what was performance. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Can I tell you something I learned the hard way? People are complicated. They have reasons for the masks they wear, for the things they hide. Sometimes those reasons are selfish. But sometimes they're protective of themselves, of others, of something fragile that might break if exposed too soon. How am I supposed to know which it was? You ask yourself, did this person's actions match their words? Over time, consistently, when it mattered, did they show up for you? Did they support your growth? Did they make you feel valued? Yes. The answer was immediate and undeniable. Yes, Michael had done all of those things. For 6 months, without fail, without asking for anything in return. But he still lied. Then you have to decide if the lie is something you can forgive. If the truth he was hiding makes sense in context. If the person beneath the deception is someone you still want in your life. Sarah stood, moving toward the door. Just don't make the decision from a place of hurt alone. Make it from a place of honesty about what you actually want, not what you think you should want. After she left, Rachel sat in the empty office and stared at her phone. Still blocked. Still silent. Still carrying the weight of everything unsaid. What did she want? She wanted Michael. Still wanted him, despite everything. Wanted his voice in the morning and his questions at night and the way he made her feel seen. Wanted to hear him laugh and watch his face when he talked about things he cared about. Wanted to know what it felt like to be held by someone who'd waited a century to find her. But she also wanted the truth. All of it. No more secrets. No more hidden identities or supernatural laws or complications she didn't understand. She wanted both. Which meant she had to be brave enough to reach for it. 3 days later, Rachel stood in front of the same lodge where everything had fallen apart, her rental car parked behind her, her heart hammering so hard she felt dizzy. She hadn't called ahead, hadn't texted, hadn't given Michael any warning that she was coming. Part of her was terrified he wouldn't want to see her. Part of her was terrified he would. All of her was terrified of what happened next. Eleanor Frost answered the door, her professional mask slipping to show genuine surprise. Miss Chin, we weren't expecting you. I need to see Michael. Please. He's not here. He's at the training grounds with the younger pack members. But I can. Just tell me where. Eleanor studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Through the forest. Follow the main path east for about a mile. You'll hear them before you see them. Rachel followed the directions, her feet carrying her down a path that wound through trees so massive they blocked out the sun. The forest here felt alive in a way that forests back home didn't. Watchful. Aware. Like the trees themselves were observing her passage and judging whether she belonged. Then she heard voices. Laughter. The sound of bodies moving through space, running, fighting, playing. She emerged into a clearing and stopped dead. There were maybe 30 people there. Young people, teenagers mostly, engaged in what looked like martial arts training mixed with something wilder. They moved too fast. Jumped too high. Fought with a ferocity that seemed inhuman because it was. As she watched, one of the fighters shifted. Not completely, just their hands, which elongated into claws mid-strike. Another leaped 15 feet straight up to catch a tree branch. A third moved in a blur of speed that shouldn't have been possible. Werewolves. Real, actual werewolves. And standing at the center of it all, calling out corrections and praise in equal measure, was Michael. He was dressed simply jeans and a dark shirt, but he commanded the space like it was his throne room. Every young wolf looked to him for approval, deferred to his judgment, followed his instructions without question. He was teaching them, Rachel realized. Not just fighting. Control. How to be what they were without losing who they were. Then he sensed her. His head turned, those silver eyes finding her instantly across the crowded clearing. Everything stopped. All the young wolves followed his gaze, turning to stare at the human woman who'd appeared at the edge of their training ground. "Continue without me," Michael said, his voice carrying easily. "Elena, you're in charge. I want to see everyone practicing the containment exercise." He walked toward Rachel, and she was struck by how he moved. Like a predator. Graceful and dangerous and utterly controlled. He stopped a few feet away, maintaining distance, his expression carefully neutral. "You came back." "I came back." "Why?" Rachel looked past him at the young wolves who were pretending to practice, while obviously listening to every word. "Can we talk somewhere private?" "Of course." He led her deeper into the forest, away from the clearing, until they reached a small stream that tumbled over rocks in a soothing rhythm. They stood on opposite sides of it, separated by water and words unspoken and the weight of everything that had happened. "I'm sorry," they said simultaneously, then stopped, staring at each other. "You first," Michael said. "I'm sorry I ran. I'm sorry I blocked you. I'm sorry I didn't give you a chance to explain before I left." Rachel took a breath. "I was scared. And hurt. And overwhelmed. And I handled it badly. You handled it like someone who'd been lied to by people they trusted before. I don't blame you for running, Rachel. I blame myself for putting you in that position. Tell me everything. No more secrets. No more hidden truths. I need to understand all of it." So he did. Standing by that stream in the dappled sunlight, Michael told her everything. About the curse placed on him decades ago for choosing to save his people over following ancient protocols. About how the curse meant he couldn't recognize his mate by any normal means, only by a genuine plea for help. About the law that forbade him from claiming someone who was suffering. About the impossible choice between revealing himself and giving her freedom. "I watched you heal for 6 months," he said quietly. "Watched you become strong and whole and yourself again. And every day I wanted to tell you. Wanted to show you who I was. But I couldn't. Because the law exists for a reason, to protect people like you from people like me. To make sure that when an alpha king claims a mate, it's a choice made freely, not born from gratitude or dependence or the trauma bond of being rescued. That's why you waited. That's why I waited. That's why I stayed in the shadows. That's why I helped you build a life that was entirely yours, so that when I finally revealed myself, you'd be strong enough to walk away if that's what you wanted." Rachel crossed the stream, stepping on stones that were slippery with moss, until she stood directly in front of him. Close enough to see the silver flecks in his eyes. Close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his skin. Close enough to touch, though she didn't. "Not yet. What if I don't want to walk away?" Hope flashed across his face, quickly suppressed. "Then you need to understand what you're choosing. I'm not human. I live for centuries. I rule a world you didn't know existed until 2 weeks ago. Being with me means entering that world, the politics, the danger, the complications of supernatural life. What does being your mate actually mean? It means you're mine and I'm yours. Completely. Irrevocably. The bond between mates is sacred in our world. It's the most powerful magic we know. You'd be able to feel my emotions. I'd be able to sense when you're in danger. We'd be connected in ways that go beyond human understanding." That sounds intense. It is. And it's forever. Mates don't divorce. Don't drift apart. Don't fall out of love. The bond only grows stronger over time. Rachel looked at him, really looked at him. This man who'd saved her life from the shadows. Who'd supported her healing without asking for credit. Who'd loved her enough to let her go, even when it clearly cost him everything. "Ask me the question," she said. Michael's brow furrowed. "What question?" "The one you asked me in that study. You asked if you'd ever made me feel anything I didn't want to feel. If you'd ever pushed me towards something I didn't choose myself. Now I'm asking you, in the past 6 months, even with all the secrets, even with the hidden identity, Did you ever lie about how you felt about me? No, never. Did you ever pretend to care when you didn't? Rachel, I cared too much. That was the problem. Then here's what I think. I think you made the best choices you could in an impossible situation. I think you protected me when I needed protecting and gave me space when I needed space. I think you helped me heal and grow and find myself again. And I think, her voice broke slightly, I think I fell in love with you somewhere along the way. Not with the Alpha King. With Michael. The man who stayed up all night texting a stranger. The man who remembered I loved sea turtles. The man who made me believe I was worth saving. You are worth saving. Worth everything. So are you. Rachel reached up slowly, giving him time to pull away. When he didn't, she rested her palm against his chest, feeling his heart hammer beneath her touch. So here's my choice. I choose you. I choose this. I choose us, complications and all. I choose to walk into your world and figure it out together. Is that okay? Michael's hands came up to frame her face, his touch gentle despite the strength she could feel humming beneath his skin. Are you sure? Once I claim you, once the bond forms, there's no going back. You need to be absolutely certain. I'm certain. I've been certain since somewhere around month 3 when I realized I was checking my phone every 5 minutes hoping you'd texted. I was just too scared to admit it. Rachel. Her name on his lips sounded like a prayer. I love you. I've loved you since the first message. And I will spend the rest of our very long lives making sure you never regret this choice. Just kiss me already. He did. And the moment their lips met, Rachel felt something shift in the world. Not painful, the opposite of painful. Like a missing piece sliding into place. Like coming home after being lost for years. Like every moment of her life had been leading to this exact second in this exact forest with this exact person. The bond snapped into place between them, and she gasped against his mouth as emotions that weren't hers flooded through the connection. Love. Relief. Joy. Devotion so deep it had no bottom. And underneath it all, a hunger that had been denied for 6 months and was now finally allowed to surface. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Michael rested his forehead against hers. You're mine now. And you're mine. Always have been. They were walking back to the lodge, hands intertwined, when the attack came. Rachel heard it before she saw it, the sound of something massive moving through the underbrush, fast and furious. Michael shoved her behind him just as a wolf the size of a small horse burst from the trees. But it wasn't attacking. It was running from something. And that something emerged a second later, 3 wolves, darker, larger, moving with coordinated precision that spoke of training. Rogues. The word appeared in Rachel's mind like it had been placed there, and she realized with shock that it had come from Michael through their new bond. Rogues. Wolves who'd rejected pack law and hunted illegally in protected territories. The first wolf, the one being chased, collapsed at Michael's feet, injured and exhausted. Blood matted its silver fur. One leg was clearly broken. Please, the wolf shifted to human form, a young woman maybe 20 years old. Please, Alpha King. They killed my family. They're trying to eliminate anyone who witnessed their crimes. The 3 rogues stopped when they saw Michael. Even through their wolf forms, Rachel could see the calculation in their eyes. Could feel the moment they decided to attack anyway, decided that taking out the Alpha King would be worth the risk. They charged. Michael shifted. Not fully, just enough. His hands became claws. His eyes glowed silver. His teeth elongated into something that was definitely not human. And when he moved, it was with speed that made the air itself seem to bend around him. He met the first rogue mid-leap, catching it by the throat and slamming it into the ground with enough force to crack rock. The second got past him, heading straight for Rachel and the injured wolf. Rachel didn't think. Didn't plan. Just moved. She grabbed a fallen branch, thick as her arm, heavy with moisture, and swung it with every ounce of strength she had. It connected with the rogue's skull with a crack that echoed through the forest. The wolf staggered, shook its head, turned toward her with murder in its eyes. Then Michael was there, positioning himself between Rachel and the threat, his growl so deep it vibrated in her chest. The rogue backed off. The third one, seeing its pack members down, chose survival over vengeance and ran. Michael let it go, shifted back to human form, turned to Rachel with wild eyes and blood on his hands, not his blood, thank God, and looked at her like he couldn't quite believe what he was seeing. You hit a werewolf with a stick. I panicked. You saved her life. He gestured to the injured wolf, who was staring at Rachel with something like awe. You protected pack members. Rachel, that's not something humans normally do. They run. They freeze. They don't fight. Well, I'm not normal, apparently. Her hands were shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. Also, I think I'm going to throw up. He caught her before her knees gave out, holding her against his chest while she tried to remember how to breathe normally. Around them, other wolves were arriving, drawn by the commotion, responding to some signal Rachel hadn't heard. They shifted to human form, dressed quickly, began caring for the injured wolf and securing the unconscious rogues. But all of them kept glancing at Rachel, staring at her with expressions she couldn't read. Why are they looking at me like that? She whispered against Michael's chest. Because you just defended pack territory. Fought to protect one of our own. They're looking at you like they're Luna. Their queen. I am not anyone's queen. You're mine. That makes you theirs too. It's how the bond works. He pulled back enough to look at her face, his expression serious. Are you okay? Did they hurt you? No. Just scared me. And maybe made me realize that dating a werewolf king is going to be way more complicated than I thought. Despite everything, Michael laughed. Just wait until you meet the council. They're going to lose their minds. The council meeting was held 3 days later in a chamber that looked like it had been carved from the heart of the mountain itself. Stone walls. Ancient symbols. A circular table where 12 wolves sat in judgment of everything Michael did. And at the center of it all, Rachel stood holding Michael's hand while the council debated whether a human could truly be their Luna. She has no wolf, said an older male, his voice dripping with disdain. She cannot shift, cannot hunt, cannot contribute to pack strength in any meaningful way. She fought rogues with a stick, Michael replied calmly. She protected an injured pack member without hesitation. She chose this life knowing what it meant. That makes her stronger than most. She's a liability. A weakness that enemies will exploit. She's my mate. And I will not debate her value with people who haven't bothered to meet her. Michael's voice carried an edge of command that made everyone sit up straighter. Rachel is my choice. She is my Luna. And if any of you have a problem with that, you're welcome to challenge me for leadership. Otherwise, this discussion is over. Silence fell. Rachel watched as the 12 council members exchanged glances, weighing their options, calculating risks. Then, one by one, they bowed their heads in submission. All except one. An older woman at the far end of the table, her silver hair braided with beads that clicked when she moved, stood slowly. Alpha King. If I may, speak, grandmother. I'm not concerned about your mate's humanity. I'm concerned about her readiness. Being Luna isn't just about standing beside you. It's about leading when you can't. About making impossible choices. About carrying the weight of thousands of lives on your shoulders. She turned to face Rachel directly. Are you prepared for that? Rachel met her gaze steadily. No, I'm not prepared. I have no idea what I'm doing. But I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to work. I'm willing to be the kind of leader your people deserve. Not because I have power, but because I care enough to try. The old woman studied her for a long moment. Then, slowly, she smiled. That's the right answer. The only honest one. You'll do well, Luna. Give yourself time. After the meeting, Rachel and Michael walked through the forest paths, taking the long route back to his private residence. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, and everything felt surreal. Beautiful. Impossible. Are you sure about this? Rachel asked quietly. You're giving up a lot. A mate who can shift, who understands your world, who fits naturally into pack hierarchy. Instead, you're getting me. Human. Confused. Still figuring everything out. Michael stopped walking and turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. I'm not giving up anything. I'm gaining everything. You think I want someone who fits perfectly into existing structures? I want someone who questions them. Who brings new perspectives. Who chose this life knowing how hard it would be, instead of being born into it without choice. I hit a werewolf with a stick. You did. It was impressive. I don't know how to be a queen. Neither did I when I became king. We'll figure it out together. Rachel looked at this man, this werewolf, this king, this person who'd saved her life, and then given her the freedom to save herself, and felt that bond between them pulse with warmth and certainty. I love you, she said. In case I haven't said it enough. I love you in ways I didn't know were possible. Love you enough to face down werewolf councils and rogue attacks and whatever else this life throws at us. I love you too. Have loved you since you accidentally texted me at 3 in the morning asking for help. Will love you for the next few centuries at least. Centuries. Mates share a lifespan. Didn't I mention that? No. You definitely did not mention that. Surprise? He smiled at her expression. Too much. Rachel thought about it. Thought about centuries of mornings waking up beside him. Centuries of conversations and adventures and the quiet moments that made up a life. Centuries of being loved by someone who'd waited over 100 years to find her. No, she said finally. It's not too much. It's exactly right. They kissed as the sun set behind the mountains, as the forest grew dark around them, as two worlds, human and supernatural, merged into something new. Something that had started with a wrong number text and had somehow become the rightest thing in both their lives. Somewhere in the gathering darkness, a wolf howled. Then another. Then dozens, until the entire territory echoed with the sound of pack members celebrating their king's choice. Celebrating their new Luna. Celebrating love that had survived secrets and distance and the impossible gap between two very different worlds. And in the center of it all, Rachel and Michael held each other and knew, with absolute certainty, that they were exactly where they belonged. 6 months later, Rachel stood on a beach at sunset, watching sea turtles she'd helped rehabilitate make their way to the ocean. Michael stood beside her, his hand in hers, their bond humming contentedly between them. Do you ever regret it? He asked quietly. Choosing this life? Rachel thought about the question. Thought about the late-night council meetings and the diplomatic challenges of being a human Luna in a werewolf world. Thought about learning pack politics and supernatural laws, and how to navigate a culture she'd only discovered existed half a year ago. Thought about waking up every morning beside someone who loved her completely. About having a purpose that mattered. About belonging to something bigger than herself. No, she said. Not even for a second. You. I regret not telling you sooner. But I don't regret waiting until you were ready to choose freely. And I definitely don't regret this. He gestured at the beach, at the turtles, at the sanctuary program they'd expanded together. You've made both our worlds better. That's a gift not many people have. We made them better. Together. Together, he agreed. The last turtle reached the water and disappeared beneath the waves. Rachel watched it go, thinking about journeys that seemed impossible until you took the first step. About courage that looked like sending a text to the wrong number. About love that waited patiently for the right moment to reveal itself. Hey, Michael. Yes. Thank you for answering that text. He pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her temple. Thank you for sending it. They stood together as the sun sank below the horizon, as the sky turned from gold to purple to deep, star-scattered black. Two people from different worlds who'd found each other in the darkness and built something beautiful from the light. And in the distance, if you listened carefully, you could hear the ocean singing its ancient song. A song about returning home. About finding your way even when you're lost. About sea turtles that always know where they belong. About messages sent in desperation that become love stories told for generations. About wrong numbers that turn out to be exactly right. So here's the question that matters. Would you have answered that text? Would you have stayed up all night helping a stranger? Would you have believed in a bond that defied explanation? Would you have been brave enough to choose love over fear, even when the truth was more complicated than any fantasy? Rachel did. And it changed everything. If this story touched something in you, if it reminded you that broken things can heal, that wrong turns sometimes lead to right places, that love finds us in the strangest ways, then subscribe to Cindy's Wolfheart Stories. Because here, we don't just tell tales about werewolves and romance. We tell stories about courage, about choosing yourself first so you can choose someone else freely, about the kind of love that waits patiently in the shadows until you're strong enough to step into the light. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications. Because next week, we're diving into another world where the supernatural meets the human heart, where impossible love becomes the only thing that makes sense, and where every story ends with the understanding that sometimes the greatest magic is choosing to believe in something or someone, despite all the reasons not to. Until then, keep your hearts open. Keep your phones charged. And remember, sometimes the best things in life come from messages sent to the wrong number. This is Cindy's Wolfheart Stories, where every tale has teeth, every romance has danger, and every ending reminds you why love is always worth fighting for. See you in the next story.